Do Your Job Wrestling Hour with your host, the ConKaiserdor and old school Avis Hathaway. Pin me, pay me, do your job. Pin me, pay me, do your job. Pin me, pay me, do your job. Pin me, pay me.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Do Your Job Wrestling Hour right here on Blog Talk Radio. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. I am the ConKaiserdor, and alongside me is old school Avis Hathaway, and we have yet another tremendous and action-packed show for you this lovely Sunday evening. In just a little bit, we will be joined by the former TNA superstar, the one and only Shark Boy will be joining us, so you don't want to go anywhere. It's going to be a great interview tonight. As always, the Do Your Job Wrestling Hour only brings you the best. Old school Avis Hathaway, Bud, what's going on tonight?
What's going on tonight is I went and had sushi for the first time. I didn't actually eat sushi, my wife did, but had some seaweed and some rice and some edamame, so I'm feeling pretty adventurous tonight. Beyond that, in the world of wrestling, what's going on, because you didn't specify, I guess the top story tonight, as I'm looking right now, crawling across my screen, is Kurt Angle will get arrested for yet another DUI.
Really, another DUI for Kurt Angle. This is on the heels of his backlash on WWE's greatest superstar list that they had come out with, and he was ranked in I think the upper 30s or something like that. So what's going on with Kurt Angle?
You know, Kurt Angle, he's out of it a little bit, because he also was just recently talking about how the UFC had offered him a contract. He had done a physical, and, they offered him a contract, which is, if you know anything about MMA, it's complete bullshit, because they're not going to bring a guy like Kurt Angle in that's had multiple neck surgeries. He's completely, he's been addicted to painkillers, all these things, and he's way old. He's like late 30s. According to him, they had offered him a contract, and even Dana White, the head of the UFC, said, Kurt, I love you, but that's, absolutely not true. But apparently this morning in Woodstock, Virginia, he was arrested by Virginia State Troopers and released at 3:31 a.m. after posting $2,000 bond. But he was arrested in March with a reckless driving. This isn't his first DUI, so unfortunately, Kurt looks like he's still got a few demons left to battle.
Yeah, it's no good, man. It's no good at all, because this is the second time in the past couple of weeks where wrestlers had a DUI. Last was Matt Hardy and stuff, and it's getting a little crazy, man, with the drinking and driving.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. Everybody's human. Everybody makes mistakes. Getting a DUI, it's enough, but people make mistakes. But once you start getting into that realm where it's happening multiple times, then you got a problem. If the first time if you get through the first one, being lucky enough not to kill someone else or yourself, and learn something that, hey, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, then you really need to look at getting help, because if this is happening more than once, then there's a bigger problem entirely.
Right, absolutely. And I know you mentioned how you went out for sushi. Come be a little about what you did, guy. But you didn't have the courtesy to ask what I was doing and what I did, leading up to this. Did you know that I went to 7-Eleven? I am currently drinking, although no longer a Slurpee, but water out of my new Ms. glass, guy.
Did you choose the Ms. purposely, or is that what they had, or did they have they had several people to choose from?
They had two choices. It was either the Miz or the Rock, and I choose the Miz because I'm awesome.
Are you a misfit?
I don't know, guy. I don't know if I'm a misfit, but I know that I'm awesome, so that's why I got the Miz Slurpee glass.
You got the Miz Slurpee glass. Is that going to be like the centerpiece of your kitchenware collection?
It could certainly be. It's no Glenn Beck mug, but it certainly is close enough, guy.
Wow. I know you have a full set of Spin Stops Here mugs and coasters.
I do have the Spin Stops Here doormat.
If only you were kidding.
Anyways, guys, so we got a great show tonight. We have Shark Boy coming on the show. It's going to be awesome to have him on. As you know, we're both big fans of Shark Boy. Liked his work in TNA and stuff, so we're really looking forward to having him on the show tonight. If you're listening live to the show, you want to call in 714-694-4101. You can also jump into the chat room with any questions that you want to talk about tonight, and we will try our best to address any and all questions. So besides Kurt Angle, Guy, what else is going on in the world of wrestling?
Well, I guess we could certainly touch on the happenings in WWE. It's been an eventful past couple weeks since Triple H just took it over. Looks like they're shifting away a little bit from the brand split, at least, for the time being. They're having SmackDown guys on Raw and vice versa. Also, the big news is originally signed for Night of Champions was going to be Kevin Nash making his in-ring return versus CM Punk, but apparently mixing names up. Kevin Nash is having some health issues. He's trying to get himself back on schedule, so it's going to be Triple H versus CM Punk, which I think they were initially going to save for Survivor Series, but I don't know how okay I am with this match because it seems to me that Triple H is already kind of trying to slow down CM Punk's push. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, this guy's getting over and he's getting hot. I want to interject myself into it. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you this question. What do you think is the biggest difference between what TNA was doing with Kevin Nash and what WWE is doing with Kevin Nash?
Well, I think first off, it's the scale in which they're doing it. And I think they're inserting him into an angle that's hot and kind of using him as a supporting piece, whereas they're not so much using Kevin Nash to get the angle over. You know what I mean?
Right.
Kevin Nash is not crucial to this angle at all. He could come or go. He's just almost an enhancement to the angle. Whereas in TNA, he was used as a major player, like he was a crucial part of, most of the angles they would go with.
And you make a good point there because, it kind of goes back to, when WWE brings in someone like that, they don't make someone like a Kevin Nash the focal point of the actual storyline. He's a piece. He's a part of it, almost like a chessboard. He's like a horse or a bishop. He's not a queen. He's not playing a king role. He's just a piece on the board. He's important, but he's not the focal point. And I think that's what TNA does. What they don't do properly is they bring in some of these well-known guys who've established careers and make them the focal point of the storyline. And I don't know how good that is for your business to prosper in the future.
Well, no, and I mean the best analogy I can give you is, think about a meal. When you make a meal, you have your side dishes, you have your entree, maybe your garnish, your appetizer, your dessert. TNA treats it as if like you have a steak with a side order of steak and a side order of steak and steak for appetizer and a steak dessert. Everybody's the main course. Whereas the way the WWE does it, the CM Punk, that's the main course. Then you could have Triple H as the potatoes and Kevin Nash as the beans. You know what I mean? Like they all serve an important role, but not the focal point.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And I think that's what WWE does a better job at. They do a better job at bringing in some of these guys and kind of just enhancing their storylines, making them more interesting, kind of putting a twist on things. I mean, certainly we all know Kevin Nash's deal is certainly a brief one, most likely, more or less like a Legends type deal. And it's always cool to see him back. What I find interesting though is they had him revert back. Initially, he was coming out to just no music at all. When he came in at the Rumble, it came out to the whole Diesel music and the Diesel wear. Now he's coming out to the old NWO music, so that's interesting to hear.
Well, I think part of that is they brought him out to the Diesel because it was a one-off thing at the Rumble. I think initially they probably didn't know how they were going to use him. From all the reports I've read, well, I know he's on a Legends deal, but they are going to be using him in ring. He is going to have a run, however brief, in ring. And I think the music they're probably going with because they don't like to have guys come out to no music. I mean, even R-Truth was coming out to no music for a while, and they've kind of gone away and given him music again. So I think as long as he's going to be doing some work in ring and he's going to have an entrance, they had to go with some music, and they had to go with something familiar. They're not going to go with Diesel because he's not playing the Diesel character. So,
right.
the NWO, kind of by default, they're going to go with the NWO music.
Well, we're going to take a quick break here because we got Shark Boy going to be on the show in just a moment here. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Do Your Job Wrestling Hour right here on Blog Talk Radio.
And that's a fishing line, 'cause Shark Boy said so. Give me a shield, yeah.
Let's welcome to the Do Your Job Wrestling Hour from 20,000 leagues under the sea, Shark Boy. What's going on there tonight, Shark Boy?
Hey, guys. How we doing?
Oh, we're doing great, doing great. Great to have you on the show. We've been really looking forward to your appearance here. Got a lot of great questions to ask you. How have things been going, man? What have you been up to?
Honestly, with the summer, I spent a lot of time with my kid. I have an 11-year-old son, and we have just been kind of having a great summer, and he just got back to school a couple weeks ago. And I've been doing some indies and doing some other stuff, about the last month or month and a half. But before that, it was just a whole lot of fun stuff, a lot of swimming, and obviously, and a lot of, he was playing baseball, and we watched some baseball and went to some games, and so I had a real fun summer, and I'm kind of just getting back to work now.
Gotcha. Well, it's great. I'm sure it's nice to have some downtime outside of being in the ring and stuff, kind of working the indies, but also spending some time with your family. You hear stories from other guys working for WWE on the road all the time, don't get to spend much time with their families. So I'm sure that's probably a really, really nice thing to still have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of these are the years you can't get back when it comes to the kids, and I'm glad that with the TNA schedule, it's never really been as heavy as a WWE schedule, and that's one benefit is that I've had a lot of time to spend with my son, and like I said, we've just had a really fun summer. So,
who were some of your influences and more or less your inspirations in the wrestling business?
Well, a guy that helped me out a lot early on was Chris Kanyon. For sure, he was an inspiration to me. I was a big fan of his in-ring work, and I got the chance to wrestle him a couple of times, and that was a real pleasure. And he was certainly an influence. And another guy that really tried to lend me a hand and help me out early in my career was Mick Foley. I would definitely list him as an influence. He was always wearing my T-shirt, talking about me in the media and stuff before anybody even had a clue who I was. So I would list those guys. And then as far as like the guys that I watched when I first broke in and started training would be probably Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. They were probably the two biggest stars in the industry when I first broke in. So I always list them as influences as well. And with the Shark Boy thing, I think I borrowed a little bit from all over. I borrowed some from the luchadors, guys like Rey Mysterio and Juventud Guerrera, and guys that were on Nitro, and even some of the old midget wrestling that I watched in the 80s. They did a lot of the comedy spots that I like to incorporate, in my Shark Boy matches. So I've really been influenced by a wide range of guys, as you can tell by the list I just gave you.
Yeah, and certainly seeing your skills in ring and the story that you tell and just the character, you can see a lot of those influences in you as well, which is awesome, because every guy you listed we're certainly fans of. What are some of your more fond memories working for TNA?
I had a lot of fun pretty much the whole time I was there. The last couple of years were particularly fun because I finally got to speak. And there was just a whole lot more you could do with it at that point. Before that, when I first started going down to Nashville for the weekly pay-per-view shows, it was a lot of fun doing the stuff with New Jack, where you can go to YouTube and watch the videos. He and I were playing board games, and here's this guy from the streets. He's a thug and just the complete opposite of the Shark Boy character, and yet we had this common bond in that we really liked to play board games like Twister and Candyland and stuff. Those were really fun vignettes to shoot. That was a lot of fun. And then after that, I think I teamed with Norman Smiley, and after that it was Mad Mikey, the late Crash Holly. And there was always just this chemistry that I tried to have with my tag team partners. And then, of course, once I came out of the coma and started speaking, it was me and Curryman and Super Eric, and we just had a heck of a lot of fun with that. So, I mean, The wrestling was always fun and always great. Being in the X Division was a lot of fun. It was a challenge. But I would have to say the vignettes were probably the funnest thing for me. Getting to work with Vince Russo, and he's a very creative guy. No matter what you think of him, and his booking overall, I think he was a really creative influence on me, and it was a lot of fun working with him and Curryman and Super Eric. I think that was probably the funnest stuff I ever did at TNA.
Now going back to TNA a little bit, you're talking about when you started speaking and whatnot. A lot of the thing that got really over and was really popular was when you were doing the Stone Cold Steve Austin imitation. That's the fishing line because Shark Boy said so and all that kind of stuff. How did that come about?
Well, really it was just an impression that I do. It's just something I could do, and I went on a promotional tour over in India. I was in India for about 2 weeks with Simon Diamond and Sanjay Dutt. And while we were over there, it's like any other road trip. Anytime you go on the road, the boys just sort of do things to cut each other up and make each other laugh and, just try to stay sane while you're on the road and away from your family. And one of the things was, Simon and I were talking, and I think we started talking about how we were both big fans of Ric Flair and sort of doing a little bit of Flair, impressions. And then I said, who I really liked was Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I did my impression for him, and he was, oh my God, he just loved it. He thought it was fantastic. We would go to a restaurant. Bear in mind we're in India. We go to a restaurant, and he said, what would Steve Austin say about that guy? Well, I think he's a piece of trash, and I would go and launch into my character. And it would cut him up, and it drove Sanjay crazy. And then when we got back to the States, Sanjay actually warmed up to it and thought it was funny, at the end there. But when we got back to the States, Simon said, "Do it for Jeff. You got to do it for Jeff." So I did it. I did the impression for Jeff Jarrett, and he said, "I love it. It's great. We need to get you doing that on TV." And at the time, I was sort of involved in the angle where every week I got beat up, and I would come out with something new bandaged. It was my leg, and it was my arm, and then I had little like tape on the fin as if it was bent or cracked or whatever. And I said, well, that's obvious. Then you guys got to kill me. You got to put me in a coma. You got to do something. Put me in the hospital. And when I wake up, I'll think I'm stone cold, and we'll just take it from there. And that's what we wound up doing.
You like we had said, you're probably best known for your time in TNA. You were there, obviously, as you had mentioned before, with the Wednesday night pay-per-views in Nashville, and up to as recently when, after Hulk Hogan and Bischoff came on board. Can you kind of talk about the differences in the company, from prior to bringing in guys like Russo and then later on Bischoff and Hogan, and kind of, how it was after them and, actually is now?
Well, I just think one major overall difference is that, when TNA was first starting out, nobody knew anything about it. Nobody gave it a chance. Everybody thought, well, this is just, this weekly pay-per-view concept is not going to work. Besides Jeff Jarrett, maybe a couple others, there's really not many guys on the roster anybody had ever heard of. I don't really think anybody gave it a chance. You kind of look at it now and look at what the roster looks like now, with your Hulk Hogan's and Ric Flairs and some of the really huge names in the industry, in the history of the industry, and you see a major difference. The company has really grown. It went from the weekly pay-per-view thing to Spike TV every week. We went from taping at the Fairgrounds in Nashville to taping at Universal Studios in Orlando. The company has grown in leaps and bounds, and it still has a lot of room left to grow. To be honest, I don't think anybody would say, if you look at the numbers, that TNA has caught up with WWE as the industry leader. But so there's still room to grow. But if you look at where we started, we've come. TNA has come a long, long way.
Sure, it actually absolutely has. It's become a major player in the business now. You guys had the short experiment trying to go head-to-head with WWE on Monday nights. Did you feel that that's a good idea, or did you think maybe it was a little premature to try to jump into that? Or
yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't think at the time I was probably as skeptical as anybody. I think when people asked me what my opinion was at the time, I was trying to kind of toe the company line and say, well, this is going to get us noticed and we're going to get attention, and who knows, maybe this is the right thing. But deep down, I was as skeptical as anybody. You're going up against, I don't know, it'd be kind of like if when Vince McMahon did the XFL, if he tried to go up against Monday Night Football, like right out of the gate. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
kind of, it's a really uphill battle to try to do something like that. And I think in hindsight, I don't think anybody thought it was good. I think it's a good idea now that we did that, because it really didn't last that long, and people realized that, we had a better deal going on Thursday night when we just kind of had our own audience, and why not just try to grow the TNA audience, as opposed to try to chipping away at the the industry leaders audience. I mean, I think anybody would acknowledge now that it probably wasn't the best idea to try to go up against Raw on Monday nights.
Let me ask you this question, because I know that you had a really cool tag team with Curryman. Do you feel that you really got to reach the potential you guys could have had as a tag team, or were you happy with the stint that you guys had with TNA?
I don't think we reached our potential at all. I think there's really a heck of a lot more we could have done with it. The problem is you've only got a couple of hours to tell your story every week, and we were never, I won't say never, but we were rarely featured wrestlers on the show, either the Curryman character or Shark Boy. So basically we were left with whatever was left. We kind of got the leftover time. And when that's the case, then there's some weeks you don't get on at all, and there might even be a couple months where you don't get on at all. They're not really doing anything. You're just kind of filler if you're there at all. So yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of untapped potential there when you look at it. I think there was a whole lot more we could have done. He and I, and also with the Super Eric thing, the Prince Justice Brotherhood thing, was really starting to get popular. We were selling a lot of T-shirts and getting good reactions at the house shows and things. So I think there was a whole lot of untapped potential, but you can kind of see why they never got around to doing some stuff with us, because there was only so much TV time.
Right, that's definitely true. I think you guys could have really done a lot more, especially I thought as a fan of TNA. I've been a fan of TNA since they first started back in Nashville, and it was certainly awesome to see them finally doing something with you guys and kind of giving you a storyline and stuff there. But I do believe just as you said, there is really a lot of untapped potential there. What's been your favorite personal career moment?
Well, I could go all the way back to sort of the beginning. 97 was when I had my first match, and it was on a tiny little. It was at an after prom at a high school in Kentucky, and was that a proud moment for me? Absolutely. It was like I finally was a for real wrestler, and it felt great. That was a highlight. And then 2 years later, I was performing in Cincinnati Gardens, where I went and saw Ric Flair and the Horsemen and Dusty Rhodes and all those guys wrestle when I was a kid, when I was a fan. That was a really proud moment for me because I got to, I was featured in the Cruiserweight tournament. My dad was there, and he got emotional when the fans started chanting Shark Boy. The entire arena was chanting for me and stuff. I always list that as a big moment for me. Mick Foley and D'Lo Brown and Road Dogg, Jesse James all came running out and lifted me up on their shoulders, carried me around. I was holding the trophy, and that was in the Cincinnati Gardens in 1999. Huge moment for me. I usually list that. A couple months later, I signed with WCW. I mean, talk about a huge. I mean, now you're talking about I'm a for real wrestler. I'm working for one of the two major companies in the world. That was a huge moment for me. Some of the things I did with TNA when I first started with them, it was a really big deal. When I got featured, the episode with the coma, they cut to 4 or 5 different Shark Boy clips in that episode. I mean, that was a huge night for me. It's hard to narrow it down to one thing, but if you try to look at the timeline of it and some of the things that I was lucky enough to get to do, those are really the highlights for me, I think.
Yeah, and what's interesting is out of all the wrestlers in TNA, you seem to really build a very strong cult following. A lot of people, you'd see Shark Boy signs and a lot of the Shark Boy T-shirts and stuff, and everyone doing the shark fin and people wearing the mask. And you really did build a really strong following. How does that transcend on the indie scene?
Well, I mean, it's all it is. That's what it is. I come through that curtain, and here's these same fans that were watching me on TV or coming to the shows for TNA. and they're doing it. They're flashing the fin. They've got the mask. They've got the shirt, or they made a sign. I've seen some of the coolest signs, from fans. That's what it is. It is a cult following. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know why. I kind of maybe have theories on it, but I mean, it's its own little thing. Shark Boy is its own. It exists on its own. It's amazing to me that it's that way. But yeah, on the indies, that's what it is. I come through. There's the fans. They're reacting that way, and I feed off that energy, and I try to give it right back to them in the ring. And it's just a heck of a lot of fun. And when it's done right, give me a good opponent. Give me a heel, especially somebody the fans don't like right away. You're going to have a magic formula, and the fans are going to have fun with it and have a good time. And I've just been real lucky to be able to do that for 14 years now.
Now, you recently had a return to TNA. Do you have any plans to work with them again in the future? Was that kind of like a short-term one-off thing, or?
I would love to be able to answer that. Do I have plans to work with them? I mean, sure. I'll go back to work whenever they want, whenever they need it. Definitely. I this is in my blood. It's my dream. It's all I really want to do is be a professional wrestler. So, would I go back? Absolutely. It's kind of up to them. I mean, I think they feel like they're loaded with talent right now, and they probably don't have enough time for the guys that they've already got under contract. They certainly didn't feel like they had enough time for me even while I was there. So would I go back? Absolutely. Like I said, this is really the only thing that I want to do.
But do you keep up with some of the other promotions, like Ring of Honor?
I really don't follow Ring of Honor that closely. I understand they have a new TV deal. I'm going to try to see if that airs here, but I don't watch the old tapes or DVDs or anything. Just kind of because to me that's sort of a niche audience. That style is not really it's not your sort of old school typical wrestling style. It's very fast paced and it's very cool. For what it is and for what their audience they're trying to impress. It works great. I don't know that I'm part of that audience though. You know what I mean? I typically will go for a more traditional product, but that's just personal taste. That's just my taste. I've definitely had some friends that have worked in Ring of Honor, and I've done my best to sort of keep up with what they're up to when they're there. But as far as sitting down and watching an entire Ring of Honor show, I don't think I've ever done that. Maybe just kind of a match here and there.
Now, I know at one point there was some talk. I don't know if this was just hearsay on the internet or if there was any legitimacy to this, but there was talk at one point of you possibly doing some referee work with the WWE. How much of that is true, and did that fall through, or what happened with that?
Yeah, I've never done referee work for WWE. Did it fall through? I mean, there wasn't really anything there to begin with, to be honest with you. I speculated on, the idea of attempting to do that, trying to do that, because I started out in the business as a referee, and I actually wound up doing a little referee work for TNA whenever they needed it. I would fill in and kind of do some of the stuff at the house shows. That's one of the advantages of wearing a mask. Nobody knew when I went out there and did it. It's not like, there might have been somebody there that knew me from the indies or, from working with me in the industry that maybe, oh, my God, that's Shark Boy, he's up there repping, that's so funny. But, it wasn't like, there were Shark Boy chants or anything like that while I was repping.
Right.
So that's one of the advantages of wearing a mask is you get to kind of, your identity remains a secret and you can do things like that. I had fun doing it at TNA with repping. It's actually, it's an easy gig. It's not an easy job. It's a skill. It sort of takes practice, but you don't get beat up as much. You don't take bumps. You don't have to get, slammed off the top rope or anything like that. So for me, it was always a lot of fun because I could go on the road with everybody and still hang out and have fun with everybody, but I wasn't getting the snot knocked out of me every night, So I like that part of the referee thing. Would I do it for WWE? Sure, that would be great. If that opportunity comes along, if I can make that happen somehow, that may be something that I attempt to do in the future. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely a nice change of pace. I'm sure, like you said, you're not taking the same bumps you would take as a regular worker, and but it is kind of its own type of position, in the business, so to speak.
Well, it's not easy. A lot of people think you can just kind of put, I work for a lot of indies where they throw the untrained wrestlers in as referees. And the problem with that is a bad referee can make a really great match just kind of so-so because they can mess the timing of it up. Whereas a really good referee can actually add to a match and make it better. I mean, it's definitely a skill, and it's something that gets overlooked a lot. It's actually a really important part of a match. There's not just two guys in the ring. There's three guys in the ring.
Right. And the referee is intricate in telling the story in the ring as well.
Absolutely. If his timing's off or he's not doing his job right, it totally screws the story up.
Exactly. We have a question from the chat room. One of our longtime listeners, he pretty much asks every guest we have on the show this same question. He wants to know what is one of the best rib stories from the road or behind the curtain you can share with our listeners?
See, I always get that question, and I never know what to say because the really, really good ones I can't repeat. Without possibly affecting like some marriages or some relationships or some employment status. I can never tell. Generally, I will tell the India thing for my great, even though it's not a rib, my great road story. I will tell that one, but I've already told that. So I guess I would have to probably say there was a guy I came up into business with early on in Cincinnati, and his name was Ray Steele. And this guy could rib. I mean, he was really good. He did a really intricate rib on some people who I won't name, where he pretended that he was a female online, and sort of coaxed these individuals into chats and things like that, and then admitted that he was like a transgender person, like he wasn't actually a female, and that sort of thing. And so meanwhile, everybody at the gym already knew that there was this relationship going on with this internet woman, and so that's when the hazing and the teasing really started heavy, and it went on for a good little while. That was sort of the running gag and the running rib. Hey, did you talk to Susan today? And then eventually it came out that the whole thing was a rib. So, but yeah, I would give Ray Steele credit as being one of the finest probably ribbers that I've ever met in the industry.
Yeah, I mean it's funny to hear some of these stories, and certainly coming in contact with a tranny is always interesting because
right.
I have a story I can't share over the air because it's just one of these stories that involves friends, but we kind of had a very similar situation. And
the really good ones you can't repeat. So
right.
So and I mean that was a very vague description of this rib. Trust me, I'm not going into very much detail. So.
I hear you. I would totally respect that there. Let me ask you this question. This is probably a very odd question, but I'm curious to hear what your response is. Who would win in a shark cage match, Shark Boy or Quint from Jaws, and why?
Man, I don't want to disrespect Quint. I mean, Jaws is an all-time classic and an all-time great. But, this is how I make my living and how, this is the industry I'm in. So if we were having an act-off, then I guess he would win. But as far as a shark cage match, I got to go with Shark Boy.
Yeah. I would go with Shark Boy, too. I don't know if Quint Quint got eaten by the shark, so technically by default you win.
Well, yeah, unless he could somehow trick me into, biting into him while he had an explosive on him, I think. And even that isn't that more of a draw? That's not like he beat me, really.
Yeah. I definitely think. If you can give a word of advice to a young wrestler, what would it be?
That's another tough one for me to answer because blanket advice in this business is just so it's just not helpful. It really isn't. I might give you a piece of advice, and then the guy sitting next to you, I'm going to give him a completely different piece of advice. But in general, I would say it's a good idea to find a good place to train. Find somebody reputable to train you. Don't fork over a bunch of cash to somebody you've never heard of or somebody that doesn't have references of some sort, somebody that doesn't have connections of some sort. Just be wary and be leery of what, don't take everyone at face value, not just in the wrestling business, but in life, whether it's a salesman or whoever it is, just be kind of leery of who's out there and where you're spending your money, and get a good, solid wrestling education if you decide to get into business. Make sure you build the foundation first. You got to build the foundation of the house before you worry about what color the curtains are going to be.
That's definitely good advice. I got one final question for you as well. Being plugged in and working in TNA for a long time, any guys you see on the way up that people should keep an eye out for?
I'm really impressed with Gunner. I think he's cool. I've really liked watching his matches. The other guy that was I really like the Young Bucks too. They were cool. They're not with TNA anymore, but I really saw a lot of potential in those guys, just because they were exciting and fast paced, and I would have liked to have seen them do more with the Motor City Machine Guns. I thought those matches were really cool. So I would list them, and then I would say it's so much of the roster is so young. I'm a fan of the Robbie E character. I think that thing's cool. That guy got so much heat on the house shows. He was a really terrific heel. I loved working with him. I thought he was really fun to work with. And he's a super nice guy in real life. I'm a fan of the Robbie E thing too. So I don't know. That kind of gives you. I could probably sit here all night and name guys. Because I see potential in most of the guys on the roster. I don't think there's really too many bad eggs on the roster, so to speak.
Yeah, if you were brought back in with TNA, who would you like to work with?
Well, I definitely think Robbie E is a good. Again, there's a guy that just has this natural heat. The fans just hate him when he walks out. They hear his music, they see that hair, they see him doing the dance, and they just hate his guts. That half your job is over right there, whether I'm super popular or not, and hopefully I am, based given whatever arena we're in, whether I'm really over or not, they hate his guts. So it's almost like I can't go wrong. So he would be a good example of a guy that I would really love the chance to work with, and then if you look at it like. Some of the legends in the business, I really didn't get to do a lot with guys like Ric Flair or Sting or, somebody like that. Love to do a segment with a Hulk Hogan or somebody like that. I would love to go and work with the legends, at least from a vignette standpoint. I think that would be really cool, a really cool thing to do. But, as far as who I wrestle in the ring, just put me in there with a heel. That's all I think that's the way Shark Boy plays best, because at its roots and at its origins, it was sort of meant to be a superhero type character. If you put me in there with another good guy, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But if you put me in there with a heel, I promise you I can win the people over using this character.
Right. And it's interesting because, when they finally gave you the whole Stone Cold gimmick and allowed you to finally cut a promo and talk, that really just increased and heightened your character to the next level. And I think that to keep that going, if you were to be brought back, certainly you being able to cut your own promos and stuff, I think is awesome, because you really proved if people were a little unsure before, you really proved that, not only were you good in the ring, but you also were good on the mic as well.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. What's funny is I went to college and I majored in communication. And then I spent about 10 years playing a character that didn't talk. So I could not have used my college degree any less, Here I am, someone who had to give speeches and record things and do things like that for my major in college. I was pretty comfortable at public speaking and a little bit of experience with drama in high school and things like that. And yet I played this silent character. One thing it did for me, though, is being a silent character, I really had to rely on body language. I really had to rely on nonverbals to sort of get the message across. And I think that maybe helped my in-ring work, because I wasn't able to back it up with anything I would say on the microphone. I wasn't able to say, hey, watch this, I'm going to go out there and I hope I don't hurt my knee in this match. I would actually have to go out there and pretend like I hurt my knee in this match, and get that point across. You couldn't even see my face. I didn't even have facial expressions to back it up. I had to do it with my body. So right. I think that maybe lent itself to, perhaps why I was able to catch on to the in-ring stuff. And then, when I was able to talk, it was almost like it made things easier. It was almost like, oh, wow, this is probably how I should have been doing it all along. you know, and this is what every other wrestler sort of has the opportunity to do, is go out there and be a personality and be a character, you know, with the mic in your hand. So, yeah, it just kind of made things easier and made things more fun. It added some depth to the character, and it was just a whole lot more fun getting to talk, you know?
Yeah, certainly. And the ones that usually don't speak usually have a manager of some sort to do the speaking for them.
Yeah, I never even had that. So,
right.
but you know, generally speaking, a babyface with a manager, that's not real commonplace anyway. So, you know, I don't know how that would have worked unless it was a real Pretty Mermaid or something. I don't know if that would have worked.
We're just going to take one more question from the chat room, then we're gonna wrap up here. Question from the chat room from Solar Bang. He wants to know, who was your favorite wrestler before you got into wrestling, and then after you got into the wrestling business, did your perception change of that person?
That's a great question. My favorite wrestler when I was probably since 11 years old was the Macho Man Randy Savage, no doubt about it. He was, whether he was babyface or heel, and I didn't even know what that meant back then, whether he was a good guy or a bad guy, it didn't matter. I was rooting for him. I supported him. I loved his interviews. I loved his matches. Just overall, as a character, from the beginning of the time I saw him until, you know, as long as I can remember, I supported Randy Savage, and he was my favorite wrestler. Didn't matter who he was wrestling. Did my perception change of him? No, not really. I mean, if anything, I probably garnered a little. I would go back and watch and think, wow, just to have that much charisma and to be able to go out there and turn it on like that and win people over or make people hate you as easily as it was appeared to be for him, I think if anything, I gained more respect for him when I got in the industry. And then I actually got to kind of work with him a little bit at TNA. I was in a couple of segments with him, and that was like a dream come true. For me, it was like going out in your backyard and tossing baseball with Babe Ruth or Joe DiMaggio or somebody. That's what it felt like when I got to get in the ring with the Macho Man. So he probably, you know, was, is, and maybe always will be my overall all-time favorite professional wrestler.
Yeah, we would definitely concur. I mean, there's not many that were better than the Macho Man, so rightfully deserves a place in the WWE Hall of Fame. And I mean, amazing.
It's a short list. It's a short list. You know, Ric Flair I would list as an all-time favorite. Obviously, Stone Cold Steve Austin. You know, and you can't start on that list without naming guys like Hulk Hogan and The Rock. You know, but it's a short list of guys that are that have had as big of an impact on the industry as the Macho Man Randy Savage. Right,
exactly. Now I know that website-wise and social networking, I know you have the sharkboy.net site, which really seems to be your main site where people can go and buy Sharkboy merchandise and keep tabs on, you know, what events you may have upcoming and what's latest going on with you. Is there any other websites you may have that people can kind of follow you on, or any events you have upcoming that people can check out?
You know, that's I'm going to do exactly what you said. I'm going to send you straight to my home base, which is sharkboy.net. There are links there. I have a MySpace and a Facebook. I'm not a real big social networker. I don't tweet. I get on my site occasionally if I feel like there's some, if I want to answer some questions from fans or things like that. But I don't get on it every day. Sharkboy.net is sort of home base, and everything is linked to there. My schedule's there. Merchandise is there, like you mentioned. Even results. I've had webmasters over the years that have kept track of like every match I've ever had. So there is just an awesome history of Sharkboy dating back to '97. If anyone's interested, it's there. So yeah, that's my site, sharkboy.net, and all the other stuff is kind of linked to it, and you can sort of go out and explore from there. But that's what I would do. I would send people to sharkboy.net to find out anything they want to know Sharkboy-wise.
Awesome. Now, you know, how often do you update the Facebook page?
Probably not often enough. I have a webmaster that sort of handles that for me, and I myself, like I said, don't really have a whole lot to do with the overall content. But, you know, I rely on some help from my friends, basically, is what it amounts to. And I have, you know, people tell me, geez, you need to freshen this up, or you need to change this, or you need to whatever. whenever I get enough people telling me stuff like that, it usually gets done. So
right.
If you feel like the content needs to change, drop me an email. Let me know.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of people have, post a lot of stuff. A lot of them, miss you and want to see you back, in TNA and stuff like that. So hopefully we'll see you back on TV again because, I know as fans and people that I know are followers of the show, a lot of people are fans of yours. And when you left TNA, certainly to lack of a better word, it sucked because we thought we were probably one of the better actual characters that TNA had, and it's a shame that you're not there right now. But as the wrestling business goes, things kind of go around in a circle. So, I'm sure you'll be back
Sure.
at some point.
Well, listen, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody that gets on the web and posts things like that or emails me things like that. I really do appreciate it, and it's just we're kind of wrapping things up. I guess probably the best way to do it is just to thank everyone for that. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to live my dream for 14 years if it wasn't for the wrestling fans. The fans are the ones that decided I could stay, and I really do appreciate it. And I would kind of like to, if we are wrapping this up, kind of close by saying thank you to everyone out there, and I really, really appreciate it. Please keep doing it. Keep telling people you want to see me on TV. Keep coming out and seeing me at local events when I come nearby. And drop by sharkboy.net and say hi, please. I really appreciate everything the fans have done for me.
Good stuff. Would you mind doing a drop tonight for the show?
I can do that.
Hey, this is Shark Boy, and you're listening to the Do Your Job of Wrestling Hour. Hell yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time. Both I, the ConKaiserdor, and Old School Avis Hathaway, we appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening. And, again, we just want to thank you, and thank you for what you've done so far in the ring. And we know it's not the end of the fishing line for you, Shark Boy, so hopefully we'll see you again soon.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, that was Shark Boy right here live on the Do Your Job Wrestling Hour on Blog Talk Radio. Great show tonight, Old School, man. We got into a lot of great stuff with Shark Boy, and as always, man, a great interview.
Yeah, it really was. And, I mean, this one was a little bit special for me. We have guys on all the time, and I enjoy it every time. But full disclosure, I am a Shark Boy mark, as well as you. I have been for, a few years now, and it was really cool to get him on and kind of talk to the guy behind the mask a little bit, and, kind of get his feelings on the state of the business today and TNA especially. And, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we're certainly big fans. I mean, at the end of the day, I think everyone is a fan. If you're in the wrestling business, if you're not a fan first, I'm not really sure what your place is, really, but you got to be a fan first. And certainly, we're fans of his, and it was awesome to have him on the show because, when we first started our show back in September of last year, we threw around a lot of names of possibly who we'd want to start reaching out to see about being on the show. And he was one of the first guys that we had in mind that we wanted to get on the show. And I kind of feel like we achieved that, and it was awesome to have him on.
Yeah, he was definitely at the top of the list. Shark Boy's one of those guys that, he's not a big guy. He's not your giant in the ring. But with what he had and the character he had, like he said, he's been doing it 14 years. He's carved out a niche for himself in this business, and he's wildly entertaining. I loved the whole Stone Cold imitation thing. I thought it was hilarious. So it was great to have him on. We have a lot of good guests upcoming as well. So hopefully everybody keeps tuning in and tell your friends. But this one was definitely one of my favorites.
I agree. We're going to take just a quick break here. Then we're going to wrap things up. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Do Your Job Wrestling Hour right here on Blog Talk Radio.
This is Calypso. And I'm telling you, you better listen to the best wrestling radio show, the Do Your Job Wrestling Hour. You hear me? All right now.
Welcome back to the Do Your Job Wrestling Hour right here on Blog Talk Radio. I'm the ConKaiserdor, and alongside me is Old School Avis Hathaway. We just had a great show tonight, interview with former TNA superstar, the one and only Shark Boy. Great stuff, as always, here. And, we got another great show lined up next week for everybody. Our one of our first. I don't think he was officially our first guest, but actually he's probably our first guest who's kind of worked more of the indie scene and has wrestled internationally as well. He will be back on the show. The one and only Tokyo Monster Kahagis will be on the show next week, September 11th. You don't want to miss it because he's always a great person to have on the show, and I know he's got some good stuff to share because there's some issues going on right now. A little controversy with the NWA Junior Heavyweight title. I know Kahagis wants a shot at that there, so I'm sure we'll get into all that and more as Kahagis is an awesome interview. So,
yeah, like you said, just to touch on, we have Kahagis coming up. He's a great guy. We had him on. If you missed the first interview with him, it's still on the archives. You can definitely catch up, get up to speed with him. If you're not familiar with his work, definitely check out YouTube. And, he's a great talent, so it's going to be exciting to have him back on. As you said, there's a little controversy going on. So hopefully we could delve into that a little bit. And, in the weeks and months ahead, we have a lot of great guests booked up, a lot of guys a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak. So if there's anybody that people really, really, really want to see on, let us know, and we'll see what we can do. We can make no promises, but we can certainly try to get whoever people want.
Right, exactly. And you know what? I think one of the things we enjoy doing as well is maybe even like a theme. I know for August we had a lot of, it was all women in the wrestling business on the show for August. So we're throwing around, some different ideas, different themes, stuff like that. I do want to let our listeners know, though, after our show on September 11th, we are going to take a little bit of a hiatus, kind of regroup, get a little bit of a breather here, and get some things situated. And then when we come back, we're actually coming back in October, which we're very excited about because certainly we have a great and very interesting show lined up for our listeners in October. It's actually October 9th because the first Sunday in October is a WWE pay-per-view, so we don't want to go head-to-head with that. But October 9th, we have a show with two indie guys. One we've had on the show numerous times. He's a great friend of the show and a repeat guest. Dab Savage. He's the DCW World Champion. He will be not necessarily wrestling, but he will be competing against his former tag team partner and now one of his nemesis, Johnny Romano, who also wrestles in DCW. They will be battling it out in a Saved by the Bell trivia challenge. Now, that's going to be interesting, Guy.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. This has got to be a first. Live on the Do Your Job Wrestling Hour, and this is the only place you're going to find this, we are going to be having the first of its kind head-to-head trivia battle between, as you said, DCW heavyweight champion Dab Savage and his former partner Johnny Romano. A lot of people can do a steel cage match. A lot of people can do even a Taipei death match. How many people can say they've competed live on the air in a Saved by the Bell trivia match?
That's what I'm saying, Guy, and you and I are going to be the judges, I'm going to be the Alex Trebek to you, I don't know who you're going to be, Jeff Foxworthy or someone like that. I think it's great, Guy.
You stole my joke, Guy.
Listen, Guy.
I called you Jeff Foxworthy. I'm the Pat Sajak, you're the Jeff Foxworthy. Now, the other thing I want to hold on, before we get too in-depth cutting down each other, I do want to bring up to our listeners that once we get the details hashed out, we will be accepting submissions for questions from our audience. So if you guys have questions that you think you can stump Dab and you think you can stump Johnny Romano with Saved by the Bell trivia, get in touch with us. Make sure you're live in the chat room that night. You're calling in because it's going to be a fun time.
Exactly. And now you got to keep in mind this, and we're going to set all the rules and stuff, so don't worry. We have plenty of time to kind of set the ground rules, but we do want people to know that it's Good Morning Miss Bliss up through the college years. We are not covering the new class. I don't even consider the new class to even be Saved by the Bell, but I guess technically it is.
It is. It's under the same name, but it's, come on now. It's not the same.
Right,
it's not.
Right. It's not. Even though Screech was on the show and Mr. Belding and stuff, but it's certainly not the same show.
And one thing I want to give our audience a little taste of the kind of stuff they can expect. I still want to know how the hell Zach Morris, Lisa Turtle, and Screech, and Mr. Belding all ended up in going from Indiana with Mrs. Bliss to lovely Bayside High. I mean, I can understand maybe all the kids happened to move, maybe their parents all worked for the same company and got transferred, but how the hell does Mr. Belding end up there too?
You know what, Guy? You're really jumping the gun here. This show is not until October 9th. So let's
I'm getting our audience
by the bell questions, Guy.
I'm getting the palate wet. See, people, I'm getting their palates wet because now they're thinking Saved by the Bell, and they're thinking, well, I'd like to know the answer to that question. Well, you tune in that night, and you will find out.
Listen, if we worked for TBS and we were plugging Saved by the Bell, I'd get it. But listen, Guy, we're plugging our own show here. We're plugging our own trivia challenge, and it's October 9th, so you don't want to miss it. I'm really excited, though, for next week as we have Tokyo Monster ConKaiserdor on the show. And like the show this evening, I hope to be drinking out of my Miz Cup as well.
That's right. You do have the Miz Cup. You are the number one misfit of the night, or misfit as it would be. So after the show, you can drink some True Blood out of your Miz Cup.
I know. I can't wait. I can't wait to watch some True Blood, Guy. We only have like 2 episodes left, and it's over.
Season finale is next week. It sucks. I just hope they kill Marnie off. I'm fucking tired of Marnie.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of her character either. You know she's going down, but there seemed to be a lot of filler towards the end of this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't like her character. I didn't like Mary Ann's character in Season 2 either, and she kind of reminds me of Mary Ann.
You know, hey, because, you know, as soon as this ends, guess what's coming back? Boardwalk Empire. And Dexter,
we're back to Game of Thrones.
And Game of Thrones 2012, Guy.
Yeah, Game of Thrones will be after Boardwalk Empire ends.
2012, Eastbound and Down comes back, too.
Yes, it does. So, I mean, a lot of good stuff on the down the pike. HBO, if you don't have HBO, I just have to say what the hell is wrong with you, because the best shows, yes, Dexter's on Showtime, I get that, but aside from Dexter, the best shows are on HBO. So if you don't have HBO, you're behind.
Yeah, plus you get HBO Go, too, where if you want to watch it on your phone or something like that, your computer, you can do that as well. But don't miss the show next week. Next week, Tokyo Monster ConKaiserdor will be on live with us, 9-10 p.m. Eastern Time. So for old school Avis Hathaway, who's the jobber of the show, and the ConKaiserdor, who's the winner of the show, we say goodnight. And we will see you next week with Tokyo Monster ConKaiserdor. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.